Returning from the probate lawyer's office, my hands shook with an eager excitement. My late husband had left me 2 condos and a lake house, properties worth over $800,000. After 50 years of marriage and sacrifice, we finally had something that could change our lives. I climbed the stairs to my condo with a smile, picturing the joyful faces of my daughter, Claire, and her husband, Mark. But as I reached my door, I heard their voices from the living room. Something in their tone made me pause, key in hand. It was instinct, perhaps, a sixth sense honed by 70 years of life. I stood frozen in the hallway and listened. Mark's voice was cold, calculating. He was saying I was old, starting to forget things, that it would be easy to convince a doctor I was no longer fit to manage my own affairs. My daughter, my Claire, the girl I had raised while working double shifts, responded with a dry little laugh. She agreed it was best to act fast, before I did something foolish with the properties, like sell them or donate them out of sentiment. I leaned against the wall as my legs gave out. The world spun. They were talking about me as if I were a problem to be solved, an obstacle between them and the money. James mentioned a legal procedure to have me declared mentally incompetent. Claire asked how long it would take. With the right contacts and a few manipulated medical evaluations, he replied, they could have total control in under 6 months. They spoke of stripping me of my freedom, my dignity, and everything my husband and I had built, as if they were discussing a dinner menu. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. Something inside me turned cold and silent. I heard Claire say I had always been too trusting, that a little fake affection would be enough to make me sign anything. When I heard footsteps approaching, I hurried down the stairs as fast as my aching knees would allow. I walked for hours, tears streaming down my face, the taste of betrayal in my mouth. I passed the park where I used to take Claire as a child and wondered when she had changed from a bright-eyed girl into a woman who could conspire against her own mother. After her father, Richard, died 3 years ago, her visits had become brief, obligatory. But since learning of the inheritance, she had been calling constantly, her concern a complete fabrication. As the sun set, my sadness hardened into a sharp resolve. If they thought I was a foolish old woman, then that's exactly who I would be for them. But inside, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in years. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I was going to be smarter. I pulled out my phone and dialed a name I hadn't called in years. Margaret, I said, my voice breaking. I need your help. Something terrible has happened. She didn't ask questions. She just told me to come to her house, that she would make coffee. With every step, I felt the broken woman who had fled her building begin to recede, replaced by someone my children had never seen before. My name is Helen Peterson. I am 70 years old, and my daughter had just taught me that if someone is going to play dirty, you must learn the rules of their game. I was born in a small town where women learned their value was in serving others. I married Richard Peterson, a good man in construction, and we had our daughter, Claire. We gave her everything we could, private school, new clothes, piano lessons, paying for it with overtime and scrimping on ourselves. We wanted her life to be easier than ours. Perhaps that was our mistake. We gave her so much she never learned the value of sacrifice. When she was 23, she met Mark Collins, an accountant from a family with a bit more money. I saw something calculating in his eyes from the start, but Claire was in love, so I held my tongue. They married in a ceremony that cost us 2 years of savings. Over the years, their visits grew less frequent, their conversations more focused on money. Richard noticed it first. Something's changed in her, he told me once. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes anymore. 3 years ago, Richard died of a massive heart attack. Claire came to the funeral but left 2 days later, leaving me alone in a condo full of silence and memories. It was Margaret who saved me. A widow herself, she understood the loneliness and forced me to go out, reminding me that life went on. Richard had been prudent. He'd left a small life insurance policy, but more importantly, he had invested in properties over the years. 2 condos we rented out and a lake house we'd bought 20 years ago, dreaming of a shared retirement. For 3 years, the properties were tied up in probate. Then, a week ago, the lawyer called. Everything was officially in my name, worth approximately $800,000. I called Claire, excited to share the news. She said she and Mark would come over the next day, an urgency in her voice that I should have questioned. I spent the night imagining our reunion, how this inheritance could finally bring us closer. How naive I was. How stupidly hopeful. Margaret opened her door and knew at once that something was wrong. She hugged me while I trembled, then sat me on her sofa with a cup of coffee. I told her everything I had heard. She listened in silence, her expression hardening with every word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Helen," she said, her voice firm, "I know this hurts, but we both know the truth. They are planning to steal from you. If you don't act now, they will succeed." She was right. Admitting it meant accepting I had lost my daughter long ago, when she stopped seeing me as a mother and started seeing me as a resource. Margaret, who had worked in municipal administration for 30 years, immediately started making a plan. First, she explained, "You need to document everything. Every conversation, every visit. Without evidence, it's your word against theirs." "But how?" I asked, feeling lost. A dangerous smile touched her lips. "My nephew David is in tech. He can install discrete cameras in your condo they'll never notice. You can also record conversations with your phone. It's legal if you're part of the conversation." The idea was terrifying but empowering. They had chosen betrayal. I was just learning to defend myself on their turf. "Next," she continued, "you need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Mr. Cole. He worked with the city on elder protection cases. He's honest, and he won't be intimidated. I'll call him in the morning." I returned to my condo late that night. It was dark and silent. They had left, likely frustrated I hadn't shown up. They would never imagine I had heard everything. I thought of Richard, of the decades of sacrifice those properties represented. The 2 condos provided a modest but steady rental income. The lake house was our refuge, our dream, now worth over $300,000. It was a fortune my daughter wanted to snatch by having me declared incompetent. The phone rang. It was Claire. Following Margaret's advice to act normal, I answered. "Mom, where were you?" she asked, her voice laced with fake concern. "I had to run some errands," I lied softly. "Then I went to see Margaret. I should have called." "It's okay," she said, after a pause where I heard Mark murmur in the background. "But you said you had important news." This was my chance to confront them, but Margaret's voice echoed in my mind. "You need evidence." "Yes," I replied slowly. "It's about your father's inheritance. Can you come for lunch on Sunday?" "Of course, Mom," she said, her enthusiasm barely contained. "We'll be there." I had just bought myself time. I had set the first part of my trap. The next day, Margaret arrived with her nephew, David. He was quiet and efficient, installing 3 tiny cameras, one on a bookshelf, another disguised as a kitchen clock, and a third in a decorative vase. He showed me how to review the recordings on my phone and how to discreetly activate its voice recorder. When he left, my condo looked the same, but now it had hidden eyes, silent witnesses that would document the truth. On Thursday, I met with Mr. Cole. His office was simple and inspired confidence. He was a man of about 55 with kind, intelligent eyes. "Margaret told me a bit about your situation," he began calmly. "But I'd like to hear it from you." I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he sighed. "Mrs. Peterson, what you're describing is tragically common. The strategy they plan to use is classic. They'll find a compliant doctor to diagnose dementia, then petition a judge for guardianship. That would give them control over your finances, your properties, even where you live." A chill ran down my spine. "But I'm perfectly fine," I said, my voice trembling. "How could a judge believe something that isn't true?" "Because the system isn't perfect," he explained. "A judge only sees papers and medical reports. But you came to me before they acted. That gives us time to prepare a defense." He outlined the plan. First, independent medical evaluations to certify my mental capacity. Second, we would update my will and create a power of attorney designating someone I trust, Margaret. Third, we would document everything. Those cameras are perfect, he said. Keep a detailed diary as well. He assured me we could work out the fees later. For now, my protection was the priority. When I left his office, the pain of betrayal was still there, but now it was joined by a determined purpose. On Friday, Claire called, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Mom, how are you? I've been thinking, it must be hard managing everything alone at your age. At your age. Those words again. I'm fine, dear, I said softly. Though I do feel a little tired sometimes. This was the narrative of fragility she wanted. That's why we want to help, she said. James and I think you need more support. We thought it would be a good idea for you to give us a power of attorney. I discreetly activated my phone's recorder. Oh, I don't know, I said hesitantly. It sounds like something important. Of course, Mom. We can talk about it on Sunday. James knows a lawyer who can help with the papers. You'll just have to sign. A lawyer they knew. The trap was perfectly designed. All right, dear, I said with feigned weariness. We'll talk on Sunday. I hung up and saved the recording. It was clear evidence of her intent. The next morning, I underwent a 3-hour evaluation with Dr. Evans, a respected neurologist. He conducted exhaustive tests of my memory, reasoning, and orientation. Mrs. Peterson, he said at the end, you are in perfect mental condition. There is no indication of any cognitive decline. I felt a profound sense of relief. That report was a shield. That afternoon, Margaret came with news of her own. Mark is in serious financial trouble, she said grimly. He owes over $150,000 in debts, and there are rumors of layoffs at his company. She had also discovered that Claire had lost her hospital job 6 months ago and had been lying about it, using my care as an excuse. It all made sense now. It wasn't just greed. It was desperation. Sunday arrived. I dressed in comfortable but slightly unkempt clothes to look a little more fragile. Before they arrived, I checked the cameras. They were working perfectly. They came at noon, Claire with a cheap bouquet of flowers, Mark with a bottle of wine, both wearing fake smiles. Over a lunch of pot roast and mashed potatoes, they made small talk, their impatience palpable. Finally, Claire brought it up. Mom, you said you had news about Dad's inheritance. I let my voice tremble. The probate finished. He left the 2 condos and the lake house. The lawyer says they're worth about $800,000 in total. The silence was electric. I saw their eyes light up with calculation. That's wonderful, Mom, Claire said, her voice choked with manufactured emotion. That's a lot of responsibility to manage alone, Mark interjected. Have you thought about what you'll do? I'm not sure, I replied, my voice insecure. It's all so complicated. I feel overwhelmed. This was the confession of weakness they wanted. That's why we want to help, Claire said, taking my hand. How about we manage all of this for you? Mark pulled papers from his briefcase. I brought some documents a lawyer friend prepared. They're simple authorizations to help with your financial matters. You just sign here and here. I took the papers with trembling hands. It was a general power of attorney, just as Mr. Cole had predicted. It would give them total control. I'm not sure I understand all these legal terms, I said, my voice small. You trust us, right, Mom? Claire asked, the trap ready to spring. Yes, of course I trust you, I whispered. Then, with perfect timing, I let the coffee cup in my other hand slip. It crashed to the floor. Oh my goodness! I exclaimed, my voice breathless. How clumsy of me! Claire rushed to help, satisfaction plain on her face. To her, this was just more proof of my decline. Maybe it's too much for one day, Mark suggested, wisely realizing that pushing too hard might make me suspicious. Why don't you take some time to think it over? They left a half-hour later, after showering me with more false concern. The moment the door closed, I reviewed the recordings. It was all there. Their greed, their manipulation, their condescension. It was perfect. The next day, Claire called. Mom, have you thought about what we talked about? I have, I said tiredly. But I still don't understand some parts. Maybe I should ask a lawyer to explain it. A tense silence followed. A lawyer, she repeated, her voice carefully controlled. I didn't know you had one. Mr. Cole helped me with the probate papers, I said innocently. I thought maybe he could explain these to me too. I could almost hear their panic. An independent lawyer would ruin their plans. She tried to dissuade me, but I gently insisted, using Richard's memory as a shield. I had made them nervous. 3 days later, a Dr. Shaw called, identifying himself as a psychiatrist. Your daughter contacted me, he said. She's very concerned about your mental health and would like to schedule an evaluation. Dr. Shaw, I replied firmly, I have no cognitive problems. I have already been evaluated by Dr. Evans, a neurologist, and the results were perfect. I do not need another evaluation. I hung up before he could respond. They had taken the next step, but I was ready. That night, Claire showed up unannounced, her face red with frustration. Mom, why were you so rude to the doctor? He only wanted to help. What's not normal, I replied, my voice dangerously calm, is for my own daughter to try to manipulate me into signing away control of my life. Her face went pale. What are you talking about? She whispered. I heard you, Claire. I was behind the door. I heard you and Mark planning to have me declared incompetent, to steal everything your father left me. The color drained from her face. That's a lie, she stammered. You're confused. I'm not confused, I said, pulling out my phone. And I have recordings. I have proof. Her expression shifted from denial to fury. You recorded us? You spied on your own family. What kind of daughter conspires to rob her own mother? I retorted. She began to cry, but the tears were fake. I had seen them too many times before. Get out, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. Leave my house now. I'm your daughter. You are a stranger who shares my blood, I replied, opening the door. She stared at me, then ran out with a dramatic sob. I leaned against the door, trembling with the force of my own liberation. The next day, Mr. Cole called. They filed a petition with the family court, he said. They're requesting a competency hearing to determine if you need legal guardianship. The hearing is in 2 weeks. Don't worry. We're ready for them. Those 2 weeks were difficult. Claire launched a smear campaign, telling neighbors and friends I was losing my mind. Some believed her, but those who truly knew me stood by my side, even offering to testify. Margaret was my rock, reminding me that the truth was on my side. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in a sober, elegant suit. The courtroom was an imposing place, but Margaret's presence, along with 3 neighbors, gave me strength. Claire and Mark were already there with their lawyer. She looked at me with an expression of feigned concern. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge was a woman in her 60s with intelligent, no-nonsense eyes. Claire's lawyer painted a picture of a paranoid, confused old woman rejecting her family's love. Claire took the stand, her performance impeccable, describing my supposed decline and our conspiracy theories as proof of my instability. Then it was Mr. Cole's turn. He methodically dismantled their case. He presented Dr. Evans's glowing medical report. He detailed Mark's crippling debts and Claire's unemployment, establishing their clear financial motive. And now, Your Honor, he said, connecting his laptop to the courtroom screen. The most compelling evidence. He played the recording. Their voices filled the room, cold and unmistakable, plotting to have me declared incompetent. The color drained from Claire's face. He then played the recording of the Sunday lunch, showing their manipulation in action. Finally, he called me to the stand. My legs trembled, but my head was high. I answered every question with clarity, recounting the story of their betrayal in my own words. My voice broke at times, but my mind was sharp. When I finished, the judge looked from me to them, her expression a mixture of compassion and disgust. After a short recess, she delivered her verdict. The petition for guardianship is completely without merit, she began, her voice firm. Mrs. Peterson is in full possession of her mental faculties. What the evidence does reveal is a deliberate conspiracy to strip Mrs. Peterson of her autonomy and assets through false allegations. This is not only a violation of family trust, but potentially a crime. She rejected the petition, ordered them to pay all my legal fees, and with a bang of her gavel, announced she was referring the case to the district attorney's office to investigate charges of fraud and attempted elder financial abuse. Leaving the courthouse, the sun finally broke through the clouds. I cried tears of liberation, of justice served. In the following weeks, Claire and James faced criminal charges and social ruin. James lost his job. Claire called once, begging for forgiveness, but her remorse was for being caught, not for her betrayal. I didn't answer. Some wounds are too deep to heal. I sold one of the condos, paid Mr. Cole, and donated a significant sum to a shelter for victims of elder abuse. I put the other properties into a trust, with Margaret as co-administrator, and updated my will, leaving everything to charity. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of the lake house, watching the sunset. The pain of losing my daughter hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined me. I had learned that family is not just blood but respect and loyalty. I had learned that the greatest strength is defending your own dignity. I live my life on my own terms now, answering only to myself. And that, after everything, is the greatest possible triumph. To all the women in similar situations, I say this: trust your instincts. You are not alone, you are not crazy, and you are not disposable. Age does not erase your right to freedom. Defend it.